Welcome to the Mad Genius Thesis, the show where we grapple with that age-old question, is there a link between creative brilliance and mental illness? And today we're diving into the life of Brendan Behan,
Oh, Behan.
a man whose talent blazed as brightly as his demons raged.
Yeah, and what better way to start than with a line from Behan himself?
Okay.
I only drink when I'm happy or when I'm sad. Sometimes I drink when I'm lonely.
Yeah.
That pretty much sums up the man, wouldn't you say?
He certainly had a way with words, even when describing his struggles.
Yeah.
So for those unfamiliar,
Yeah.
who is Brendan Behan?
Brendan Behan, he was an Irish playwright, novelist, and poet, renowned for his raw talent and rebellious spirit.
Yeah.
Imagine a life that included being imprisoned for IRA activities,
Oh, wow.
captivating audiences with plays like The Quare Fellow,
Right.
and battling a very public struggle with alcoholism.
Okay.
That was Behan.
That's quite a life, and it perfectly sets the stage for our discussion about the mad genius idea.
Yeah.
Did Behan's struggles somehow fuel his creative fire, or did they ultimately hinder his potential?
To answer that, we need to unpack the many layers of this complex figure.
Okay, let's delve into the complexities of Behan's early life.
Okay.
He was born near Dublin slums,
Right.
but his family actually had middle-class connections.
Yes, and intriguingly, he seemed to cling to this working-class image, even when it contradicted his reality, almost as if he needed to prove something to himself or the world.
But wouldn't that be somewhat disingenuous?
Perhaps, but it speaks to the contradictions that were so central to his character. Behan was a man of extremes. His grandmother, for example, was a shrewd landlady and property owner,
Oh,
far from the typical tenement dweller image.
right.
And his father instilled in him a love for literature,
Okay.
exposing him to everything from Shakespeare to Irish Republican tracts.
So a blend of highbrow literature and revolutionary ideals?
Yeah.
That must have had a profound impact on his writing.
Absolutely. And then there's his mother, Kathleen.
Yeah.
Her family was steeped in the Irish ballad tradition. Her brother even wrote the Irish national anthem.
Wow. Talk about a family history steeped in art and rebellion. No wonder he joined the Fianna Aryan,
The IRA's youth movement.
the IRA's youth movement at the age of 8.
Yes. And by 16, he was already involved in bomb making and the IRA's 1939 bombing campaign in England,
Wow.
which, as you can imagine, landed him in Borstal, a youth detention center.
That's surprising. How did his time in Borstal shape him, especially his writing?
It was a pivotal period, albeit an unlikely one for nurturing talent.
Yeah.
Hollisley Bay Borstal, where he was sent, was relatively open. He actually thrived there,
Yeah.
developing his writing skills and even becoming a house captain.
Wow.
It's almost as if being confined gave him the space and focus he needed to hone his craft.
That's fascinating. Did this experience change his views on the IRA?
Not initially. Upon returning to Ireland, he continued his IRA activities, eventually leading to his arrest for shooting a policeman during a confrontation at a Republican funeral.
So back to prison. Did he continue writing during this time?
Absolutely, while imprisoned in Mountjoy Jail.
Okay.
He devoured books, wrote poetry in Irish, and drafted plays and stories.
Ah.
And get this, his former Borstal governor, who recognized his talent, actually encouraged him.
What a twist. But wasn't he forbidden from publishing while imprisoned?
Yes, much to his frustration, but his dedication to writing persisted even in confinement. His creative spirit couldn't be contained. It's as if his passion for writing was ignited, or at least intensified, by the restrictions imposed upon him.
That's incredible.
Wow.
It makes you wonder what he might have accomplished had his circumstances been different.
Right?
So what happened when he was finally released?
He initially struggled to find his place in post-war Dublin's literary scene. Some dismissed him as a working-class upstart, perhaps threatened by his raw talent and unconventional background.
Yeah.
It's fascinating how he managed to, navigate these expectations and grapple with these conflicts.
Yeah.
And his writing becomes this window,
That's a great point. Well,
Yeah.
we've talked about the Quare Fellow and its raw depiction of prison life,
Yeah.
but his body of work goes far beyond that, doesn't it?
Absolutely. His plays are brimming with this dark humor, a biting social commentary that manages to be both entertaining and thought-provoking.
Right.
And then there's his autobiographical novel, Borstal Boy, which offers this incredibly vivid glimpse into his time in Borstal.
Yeah.
It's not just a recounting of events.
Right.
It's infused with his unique voice, his wit, his observations on life, and even hints at those unspoken desires.
It seems he found a way to channel those contradictions, those unspoken truths, into his art.
Precisely, and that's one of the reasons why Behan's work continues to resonate with audiences. It captures this raw, unfiltered human experience, the messy, the contradictory, the joyful, the painful. It's all there.
You mentioned earlier that his writing style was unique.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that? What made his work stand out?
His use of language is incredibly distinctive. He masterfully weaves Dublin slang and colloquialisms into his work, giving it an authenticity that jumps off the page. It's as if you can hear the voices of the Dubliners he so vividly portrays.
So he wasn't just writing about the working class. He was writing in their voice, giving them a platform they didn't have before.
Exactly, and that's part of his genius. He wasn't afraid to break the mold, to challenge the conventions of traditional Irish literature. He brought a fresh perspective, a rawness, a vibrancy that was both captivating and to some unsettling.
It makes you wonder how his contemporaries viewed him, particularly those in the literary establishment. Did they embrace his unique style, or did they see him as a threat?
There was definitely a mix of reactions.
Yeah.
Some saw him as a literary revolutionary, a voice for the voiceless. Others dismissed him as a crude upstart, perhaps threatened by his popularity and his willingness to challenge the status quo.
It's almost as if he couldn't win too working class for the elites, too intellectual for the traditionalists. He defied easy categorization.
And that in itself is a testament to his individuality, his refusal to conform. He was a force to be reckoned with both on and off the page.
That rebellious spirit, that defiance, seems to be a recurring theme in his life. How did that manifest in his personal relationships, particularly with his wife, Beatrice?
Beatrice was an extraordinary woman. She was drawn to Behan's intellect, his wit.
Right.
But she also recognized the challenges that came with his personality, his demons. Their relationship was a testament to both their love and her incredible strength in navigating his struggles with alcoholism and his often erratic behavior.
It sounds like she was walking a tightrope trying to support his genius while protecting herself from its destructive side.
In many ways, she was his anchor, his confidant, his fiercest advocate. But even she had her limits. There were times when his behavior pushed her away when the pain became too much to bear.
It's heartbreaking to think about the toll it must have taken on her, on their relationship. Was she able to see the man beneath the persona, the Brendan Behan that existed apart from the public image?
Absolutely. She saw the brilliance, the tenderness, the vulnerability that lay beneath the surface. She understood his demons, but she also loved him deeply, and he loved her in return, often expressing his affection and gratitude for her unwavering support.
Their story is both beautiful and tragic. A reminder that even the most brilliant minds can be plagued by darkness. And for you listening, we invite you to consider this. How did Behan's relationships, both personal and professional, influence his creative output? Did they fuel his fire, or did they add to his torment? So we've explored his struggles, his achievements, his relationships.
Right.
But there's another dimension to his story that we haven't fully explored: his political beliefs.
Yes. Behan's politics were just as passionate and often as contradictory as the rest of his life.
Yeah.
Remember, he joined the IRA as a teenager, even participated in their bombing campaign in England.
Right.
That requires a certain level of conviction.
Absolutely. But his views seem to have evolved over time, particularly after his experiences in Borstal and his exposure to different ideologies. Did his time in England ironically broaden his perspective?
It seems so. While he never fully abandoned his socialist leanings and his concern for the working class, he became disillusioned with certain aspects of Irish republicanism, particularly its more rigid and dogmatic elements.
So he was grappling with the complexities of Irish politics, seeing both the idealism and the flaws.
Right.
Did this internal struggle manifest in his writing?
Definitely. His work often satirizes the hypocrisy of the establishment, the petty squabbles of politicians while still celebrating the spirit of the common man, the resilience of the Dubliners he knew so well. It's this tension, this ability to hold seemingly opposing viewpoints that makes his writing so compelling.
It's like he was giving voice to the voiceless while also challenging the very systems that oppressed them. He wasn't afraid to bite the hand that fed him, so to speak.
Exactly. He was a thorn in the side of the establishment, a provocateur who refused to be silenced, and that's what made him so dangerous, so captivating.
It seems that contradiction was the driving force behind his life and work. He was a man of extremes, constantly pushing boundaries, both personal and societal. Which brings us back to our central question: was Brendan Behan a mad genius? Can we draw a clear line between his creative brilliance and his struggles, particularly with alcoholism?
It's a question that has no easy answers, and one that continues to fascinate those who study him. Some argue that his alcoholism fueled his creativity, providing him with a raw, uninhibited emotional landscape that poured out in his writing. Others believe it ultimately sabotaged his talent, preventing him from achieving his full potential.
It's like that old saying, the flame that burns twice as bright burns half as long. in Behan's case that brilliance was inextricably linked to his demons. But was it a fair trade-off?
That's a question each of us has to answer for ourselves.
Hmm.
There's no denying the profound impact of his work, the way he captured the human condition with such honesty and rawness, but there's also the tragedy of his life, the potential loss to his struggles.
So as we wrap up our exploration of Brendan Behan, the Mad Genius of Dublin, what key takeaways should our listeners ponder?
I think this Behan story reminds us that genius, however we define it, often comes at a price. It's a cautionary tale, a reminder that brilliance and vulnerability can coexist often in a precarious balance. But it's also a testament to the power of the human spirit, the ability to create amidst chaos, to find beauty in the midst of pain.
Beautifully put. And for those listening, we encourage you to delve deeper into Behan's work, to experience his plays, his poems, his prose firsthand as you do consider this was his genius enhanced or hindered by his demons. Was the price he paid for his art ultimately worth it?
These are questions that have no easy answers, but wrestling with them is part of what makes exploring the lives of mad geniuses so endlessly fascinating.
Indeed, it's a journey of discovery, a chance to confront our own assumptions about creativity, mental illness, and the very nature of genius itself.
Thank you for joining us on this exploration of Brendan Behan. Until next time, keep those minds curious and those questions flowing.